If you're looking for the coolest accommodation in Paris, you may consider an apartment inside the Eiffel Tower. When Gustave Eiffel was designing his most famous construction, he added a private apartment for himself right at the top. It's rather spacious, especially for Paris, where people often live in apartments 10 times smaller. It had a workshop, living space, a dining room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and piano. But there was no bedroom, so it's likely that no one ever slept there. No one lives there now, except for the mannequins of Eiffel himself, his daughter, and one of Thomas Edison. Members of the scientific community chosen by Eiffel and other notable guests were allowed to visit the property, and Edison was one of the chosen ones. Now, across the pond, the New York Public Library also hosts secret apartments for the staff. These apartments used to be a normal thing in different library buildings across the city, but now there are only 13 left out of 30. One superintendent lived in the library on 42nd Street for many years, and his own daughter was even born inside that building. The apartments came in different sizes, and some had up to 8 rooms. By 2006, the last resident custodian retired, and now these apartments are used for other library needs. It's known as the tallest building in the world, but Burj Khalifa is actually not one, but several constructions connected into one. It has a Y-shaped plan, and if you look at it from above, it's scary. I mean, it resembles a spider lily. It's uber flexible and can bend a little bit when there are strong winds or even earthquakes, so it stands safe and strong. Burj Khalifa has over 24,000 windows, and it takes a crew of 36 people around 3 months to clean them all. There's a crypt beneath the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and visitors pass through it every day. The first architect of this famous landmark designed it as a grand vestibule, which means just a big entrance hall. Several years later, plans changed, and the room was supposed to become the final resting place for George Washington and his wife Martha. She agreed to it, and architects changed the Capitol plans to add a tomb below the famous rotunda. They also planned to put a statue of Washington on top, and there was going to be a 10-foot hole in the ceiling so people could look down and see his tomb from the rotunda. But Congress couldn't agree on all the details of this memorial, and the tomb remained empty. Years later, workers closed the big hole in the floor, which was meant to give light to the tomb because cold air was leaking into the rotunda. At some point, the crypt was used for bicycle parking. Today, it has statues of famous people from the 13 original colonies, and George Washington and his wife are buried out back. No, actually, they're in Mount Vernon. There's a hidden clock and a calendar in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. The 83-foot obelisk works like a giant sundial, using its shadow to show the time and even mark special days like the solstices. When the sun is at its highest point in the sky, called solar noon, the shadow of the obelisk falls on a line of stones on the ground. On the winter solstice, the shadow reaches its farthest point. On the summer solstice, the shadow is much shorter. There are also 5 other special markers that show when the sun enters different zodiac signs. The long, thin granite line running from the obelisk toward the Pope's window shows exactly when it's noon. British seaside Brighton stands on top of a secret network of underground tunnels, with Victorian sewer systems and a hidden road. They say the tunnels were built below the royal pavilion, so that King George IV could go on, secret dates. History experts say it's not true, and the king actually used tunnels to keep his servants out of sight when they moved between the pavilion and the stables. The 30 miles of tunnels are now over 150 years old, and you can see some of them with an organized tour. But some parts of them are still in use. One tunnel serves as an emergency relief valve for heavy rain. Another tunnel has a shooting range inside. The bascule chambers inside the Tower Bridge are one of the coolest hidden spaces in London. These spacious rooms were built as an operational center to let the bridge's huge counterweights move for the bridge to open. They were the final stage in the construction of the bridge. Now, if you're lucky, you can see these chambers on a special behind-the-scenes tour of the bridge. You'd have to descend 115 steps below water level until you get into the cold and damp space with rumbling overhead. Sometimes they organize concerts here, and the acoustics are just perfect. In the early 1930s, there was a real race in New York to construct the tallest building. Once 40 Wall Street was finished, it won the title. But then, the architect of the Chrysler Building added a spire to its top, and it became the new champion. The spire was waiting all this time inside the top of the building. Workers had to carefully lift each section of it and assemble it on top. They used nearly 4 million bricks to finish the whole building and laid them all out by hand. There were also some elements from Chrysler's automotive empire, like hubcaps, fenders, and radiator caps. There was a private apartment and office on the top of the building for the founder of the Chrysler Corporation. They say he liked to brag he had the highest toilet in Manhattan. I'm sure he was flush with pride. The Capitol Records Building in Los Angeles has been sending secret messages since it opened, and you need to know Morse code to understand them. That secret message is Hollywood. The light has been sending the same message since the opening in 1956, but it has changed a couple of times. In 1992, to celebrate Capitol Records' 50th anniversary, it flashed Capitol 50. Then, before Katy Perry's album release in 2013, the message was also changed, but hardly anyone noticed the difference. One more fun fact about the building: it was the first circular office building in the world. Producer Samuel Lionel Roxy Rothafel designed a hidden apartment for himself in the Radio City Music Hall in New York City. He chose for the apartment, now called the Roxy Suite, to be decorated in the Art Deco style. It has 20-foot-high ceilings covered in gold leaf and walls with floor-to-ceiling plush drapes. Some of the most famous guests of the apartment were Judy Garland, Walt Disney, and Samuel Goldwyn. Today, it only opens for special occasions and looks exactly the same as it did in 1936. You might be able to rent it out for a private event, but they say the prices are very high. Grand Central Station in New York has a great hidden activity for travelers. There are tennis courts in a secret space named the Annex. This area used to be a recording studio. Now the location is known as the Vanderbilt Tennis Club, and you can visit it and play tennis there. The U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. has a secret sports facility where clerks, off-duty police officers, and other Supreme Court employees can play basketball. This court, the basketball court, is located on the top 5th floor of the building and goes under the nickname the highest court in the land. There's a fun sign next to it saying, "Playing basketball and weightlifting are prohibited while the court is in session." Well, we wouldn't want to tempt the justices to, drop everything they're doing to play a game of horse, but I think that would be fun. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.